Right.
Yeah, like they're like, no, we're not doing it.
Yeah, because that's what somebody had said.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I don't think that's, I don't think that's true.
Election day. Or if you still have it, they'll work with you. Well, then I start waiting for it
Gotta bring my.
Who will be doing it?
I got the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All I gotta do is be in line and close. And then look. I tell you what, I'm not, my last election, I worked for 16 hours.
All right, are we
Let's do it.
ready?
I can't
Yeah.
be there.
Rebecca, good evening. All right, we'll call the August 5th meeting of the Hastings Planning Commission to order. First order of business is we have a new member with us tonight, Bill Mattson, who is replacing Tom Maurer, and the mayor is going to swear him in.
Why don't you come right over there at that podium there, Bill?
All right.
Is that black?
I'm not sure.
Oh. Okay, raise your right hand, please. Repeat after me. I, William Mattson,
I, William Mattson,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I'll support the
of the
Constitution
United States and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of
that I'll faithfully discharge the duties of the office of
Planning Commission
Planning Commission
in and for the city of Hastings,
in and for the city of Hastings,
County of Berry,
County of
State
Berry,
of Michigan,
State of Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my abilities.
Sign there. Let me be the first official welcome you.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Dan.
Let's say something.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Would you like to give a 30-second introduction?
Sure. Bill Mattson, I'm the program director, soon to be the executive director at the Family Support Center, which is the Child Abuse Prevention Council here in Berry County. I've moved around the country, worked in nonprofits for almost 40 years, Florida, Texas, Alaska, California, here in Michigan. So I've served people, and I continue to serve the community. So I've always, wherever I've lived, I've been on county boards or state boards. So that's, I'm on the County Planning Commission and the County Zoning Board of Appeals also. So, in the CMH board, so I live here in the city, of course.
Well, welcome. Nice
Thank
to
you.
have you here, and good background. So Bill and I are, serving together on the County Planning Commission, so a fellow,
Yes.
somebody else glutton for punishment. All right, we'll move on to roll call. Bolthouse.
Here.
Darling. Foster. McLean.
Here.
Moyer Kale.
Here.
Like.
Here.
Tassava.
Here.
Mattson.
Here.
And Hatfield here. So we do have a quorum. If you'll all rise and join me for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, you've received a draft agenda. Any changes anyone would like to propose? If not, do I have a motion to
Move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Support.
Moved and supported. Discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. You've received a draft of the minutes, but we're going to withhold action on those because if you look at the very bottom of page 1, Sarah doesn't know what happened.
I don't know what
but
happened.
We're missing a sentence or two.
I'll fix it.
Yeah, unless Levi can remember exactly what the question was that he asked, and
Nope, I don't remember.
we suspect it was something about Green Street, but we also don't recall what the answer was, so we'll have 2 sets of minutes to deal with at our next meeting. Information items, we have none. Public hearings, we have none. New business, we have the review and consideration of a site plan for Chad Stora at 1000 Enterprise Drive. Dan, you want to introduce that?
Yes, thank you. As you recall, Planning Commission did a preliminary site plan review a couple of months ago for Mr. Stora for the property located on the corner of Enterprise Drive and Star School Road that he has purchased. Has been in the process of clearing that, land clearing for preparation for what his plans are that will be in front of you tonight. Rebecca has completed a site plan review for you, and that was per site plan that Chad had presented the first or second week in July. Rebecca had pointed out some deficiencies or areas that had not been noted on the site plan itself. Last night, Chad resubmitted a revised site plan. I forwarded that to Rebecca this morning, and hopefully it'll clear up some of the deficiencies or clarifications. Again, this is final site plan review for this evening for phase 1 of its project, which includes the first building, the drive and parking areas and landscaping and such. So with that, I can turn it over to Rebecca for any clarification. I will bring up on the screen the revised site plan that Chad did present last night, just so you can review that.
Rebecca, all yours.
Thank you. So I'm looking at page 5 of my staff report, which is where I summarize my findings. And I'm just going to go down through there because actually the resubmitted plan addresses most of everything, so I just want to highlight that quickly. You'll notice on bullet 1 there were a handful of informational pieces missing. Those have been incorporated into the plan, and they are in compliance with the ordinance. The second bullet, there were the refuse disposal and storage tank area. I have enclosures proposed on the plan, but the details of those enclosures were not provided, nor was the retaining wall design. Now, the revised plan does speak to the retaining wall design. I did not see it for the other 2. That might be something that the applicant can share with you tonight. The lighting plan has been submitted and is in compliance with the ordinance. The landscaping and screening plan is also part of the revised plan and meets your particular landscaping. You have both a screening requirement along the southern boundary, and then you have 2 front yards that have front yard landscaping requirements. And the landscaping plan proposes the use of existing vegetation as a means of meeting your standards, which you are allowed to accept. And it, in my opinion, does meet your screening standard, but that is a finding you should make. And then the last 2 bullets are your standard. Obviously, you're going to subject it to your Department of Utilities review and approval, as well as the fire department, and then the sign proposal. So really, I would say that the only thing that you'll want the applicant to clarify maybe is what those enclosures are going to look like, and then you'll want to specifically speak to the landscape, whether or not you're going to approve the landscaping.
You didn't specifically reference it, but has the setbacks
Yeah,
been
well,
taken
in
care
that
of?
first bullet, All of those corrections were made, and the setback is in compliance.
Okay.
So that not only has the information been added, but where necessary, corrected.
Okay. Any questions for Rebecca? Chad, any comments you'd like to make?
The only thing that I have for the enclosures that we talked about, it's going to be built with the same material as the retaining wall, so we're going to do a bay system that, so it ties together and looks uniform with the whole back.
Okay. And I'm assuming, Rebecca, that would be in
That's fine,
compliance,
yeah.
in compliance.
You know, it does make me think of one last thing, because I was really thinking of the site plan design details, but I did make a note, and I just want to highlight it here for you. As it relates to use, so the building, this phase one building is being proposed as, and so therefore my review is based on its proposal as a warehouse storage building. And that's kind of what the floor plan suggests, and so that's how the parking has been, calculated, et cetera. I would only clarify, maybe for the applicant's sake too, is that if a use wants to go in the building that is not a warehouse or storage use, but is some other use that's allowed in this district, that would be considered a change in use. And it may qualify for administrative review, but it would trigger the need for a new look at it, right? Because it's considered a change in use. Now, if they're not expanding or changing anything, it probably qualifies for administrative review, and that can just be addressed. But I think that's important because, if you get a use in there that might be an allowed use, but if it's
Could particularly change
Yeah,
parking
I mean,
calculations, yeah.
Well,
as an
or
example,
anything
or-
else that the fire department or someone might look at, yeah, auto body or something like that. It's like, well, is that allowed? Yes, but that's not what it's approved for, so, yeah.
And how would we go about, so say, because I don't want to close off
Yep.
the use, and that's one of my most important things, is to bring business to the town and utilize the space properly. So I don't want to close off that, but from the restriction side, we're not finishing each bay until we have a lease. So I'm not gonna, just put the bay in there and close it off to just storage. That's the idea, but I have had like painting company, say a window painting company come in. Would they still be in that storage use space? Okay.
No, that would be an auto service related use.
Okay.
So, great example actually, right? So allowed in the district.
Right.
But under the ordinance, it's going to have different needs because you have customers coming, you have
Yeah.
different parking needs. You might, all of a sudden, you might have outdoor storage, parking of vehicles being proposed, and their ordinance deals with that differently.
Okay.
So that would be the kind of thing, in answer to your question as to process,
Right.
is if you have a potential tenant,
Yep.
then that you can see, okay, this is not storage.
Right.
And then you reach out to Dan and you
Okay.
say, here's my proposed tenant.
Yep.
What's my next step? And then he can check that and tell you.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Questions?
I got a question. I asked Dan this afternoon, a few years ago, Tyler Guernsey wanted to buy that property, he wanted to put storage units up there, and I'm still afraid, and that's something we said no to, because it didn't create jobs. I know what you're trying to do out there. You want to have something similar to an incubator, where you want to provide space for people to grow their businesses. And I saw in your plans here where you have bathrooms in each one of them. Are you planning on letting people store stuff in there until you get the bathrooms, or what?
No, so the plan is it's going to be fully finished when they sign their lease. So I have had a lot of construction companies that want to operate out of there. We've talked to a cabinet maker in town, a lot of different industries that want to utilize the space as a daily, place to store their material,
Right.
and, that's their home base.
Yep.
situation and my home base situation.
Well, I saw when I'm looking at the outside of the building, and looking at the building, it looks like a storage unit.
Okay.
So that's my fear. And now Rebecca's talking about other uses other than storage. Is that what it's gonna be, is mainly used for storage?
I don't believe so.
No, it's just, storage is a use of a term.
I don't like that
for,
word, Yeah.
We're not talking about, multi-use storage.
Yeah.
We're talking about contractors, plumbers, electricians coming in, and their business is gonna operate out of that.
Yeah.
And I also have an office in the front that, they can put their office in there, and the bathroom is, for their workers.
Are you gonna have somebody in that office on a daily basis?
Yeah, yep.
See, I hate to keep going back to it. We turned down Tyler Guernsey because he wasn't gonna create any jobs out there. He was gonna have storage units there. And every time I hear something said about a storage unit,
Well, warehouse,
Yeah,
I
yep.
mean, we're not.
Let's
we're
call
not-
it warehouse.
We're not manufacturing things,
Right.
but, it's home base for business.
Actually, probably, given that scenario,
Yeah.
really what you're doing is providing incubator space for businesses to come in there and operate out of.
Right.
So incubator maybe.
so
a much-
is that a better word than storage,
I think-
Rebecca?
I mean, we can-
Or does it matter?
Well,
Yes.
so I would, what would be, this would be akin to a retail strip center, right? If in your commercial district, someone came in with a proposal for a retail center, and that's what they called it, and then they built a strip mall and they had 12 suites in it, what they would be getting site plan approval for would be retail, right?
Right.
And that's an allowed use. Is every single one of those suites going to be occupied by retail? Probably not. You're probably going to get a restaurant in there. You're probably going to get an office building in there. You're going to get other things that are not retail. Well, if it's approved for retail, then if one of those suites becomes occupied by something other than retail, it's considered, from a zoning perspective, it's considered a change in use.
So you're saying that we should do storage, and then if any of those units are gonna be used for something other than that, then they come back to us?
Yeah,
or
because in the
staff.
ordinance, you have language that says warehouse storage building. So that's what that's akin to the retail center. So
Okay.
he's getting approved, he's building the building, here are my suites, here is my parking, here's how everything's gonna be accessed, and you're reviewing it from all of your standards. And then if one of those suites get occupied by, something else here, a wholesale establishment, let's say, then that's not a warehouse or a storage. So then he's gonna contact, and then that lets the city say, now it's a D2 use, so it's authorized, but the loading needs and the parking needs and how things are gonna operate on the site may be different. And so that site, the reason change of use triggers it for a community is so that they can check those things before it goes in there. It's not meant to be a hurdle, it's meant to be wait a minute. A lot of time went into reviewing it based on these operations. If you change operations, we need to do that whole thing again. So yeah.
Makes sense.
And if it's an incubator, then maybe he'll be back 12 times, right? I mean, if
Right.
none of them are, so if it's a contractor.
But
you
he's
just
not
want
gonna
a
have to
place
pay
store his
$1,700
equipment.
every time he comes back, he's just gonna come in front of Dan, staff.
Probably.
Okay.
Is there a definition for mini warehouse storage?
And that's not this use. But in answer to your question, yes, the ordinance specifically refers to mini warehouse or self-storage unit.
Is that the use that's being requested here?
No.
No.
What's the use being requested here?
He's coming in under warehousing storage building.
What's the definition of that? Where can I find it?
Let me see if you define that.
It almost sounds to me like you have the wrong use being asked for based on what he's saying he wants
Well,
to do.
of course, the problem is he doesn't know what his uses are. They're not self-storage units. So he's not going to rent them out to individual
People.
residents.
But
Mhm.
but he
right.
could do that. They
No,
could.
no, he cannot. That's not what he's getting approved for. Well, that's not what he's asking and seeking.
And that's what we
approval.
turned.
Then we turn into
Guernsey
a
down
massive
for.
compliance issue.
Pardon?
Then we turn into a massive compliance issue, because who's
Well-
gonna go look at the books and see who's actually renting these things?
Well, a big building with one large, 60 by, what, each unit?
240.
Well, 60 by 24 of each unit.
Yeah, I mean, that's big with a bathroom in it. That's not the same as these small, right, self-storage units. So that, he's not gonna be renting to the neighbors. They're going to be for businesses, but he doesn't know who his occupants are, so he can't get approval for each one right now. So how does that work? Well, to go through the process once and then go through the administrative review of potential future occupants is the most efficient way to do it.
I have a question. So, my experience with the use, if there's an additional use or, that's tied to the certificate of occupancy, isn't it? The use?
Well, from a building code perspective, when he
Right.
builds his building, yeah, however, the building inspector rates the building, and I mean, that's going to trigger what kind of, sprinkling and all
Is
of
the
those
use
kinds
on
of
the
things.
certificate of occupancy? From my experience, the use is always on the certificate of
Well, the
occupancy.
zoning, the use and that's not what the building code uses. They use a different rating. So they're going to look at what he's proposing to use it for, and then they're going to check the building code, and it's not the same as zoning.
Okay.
But I think the point of your question is still relevant in that it's, yes, their building plans are going to be reviewed and a building permit issued and C of O issued based upon certain, how that has been classified by the building inspector, right? Which is in part based on use potential.
I've always seen the certificate of occupancy say exactly what they're using it for, and if they're adding or subtracting anything, they would have to change their certificate of occupancy or apply for a different certificate of occupancy because of the fact that their use is changing.
Well, yes and no. So within a certain category, the building code is going to classify it, and if there might be a couple of different uses in that category,
Okay.
that would not require a change in the C of O. But some of these would be more, like if it's just a contractor's place who's going to just park their trucks in there.
Right.
Then that's going to fall under this same category. But yeah, if someone goes in and starts to, in his example, wants to start doing glass installation,
Mhm.
tinting, and okay, yeah, you're right, that's going to be
Right.
considered a different thing. So then, when it goes back through the city for the administrative, that's one of the things Dan's going to do is say, well, it might be okay from a zoning perspective, but I'm going to run it by the building inspector to see
Mhm.
if
Okay.
things are rated the way it's
All right.
supposed to be.
Okay, that makes sense.
Other question, Bill?
Rebecca, if a construction company is in there and they park their vehicles inside the unit, that's not outside storage, but if they park their vehicles outside overnight, is that outside storage?
Well, if they have a, I would say that they can't park, like, they can't have like a storage yard. So that they couldn't have their bulldozers and dump trucks lined up in the back of the building. If someone has a van, a business van, and it's got their title on it, and they park in front of their building overnight, your ordinance does not consider that a violation.
Okay, other questions?
Was there a definition for the proposed use?
Oh. For how your ordinance defines warehouse and storage. You do not define warehouse.
Does contractor services and things like that really fit the definition of a warehouse?
No, it would not be considered that.
That's why it would have to come back to us.
But he's saying that's what his intention is, to rent these to contractors and...
Doesn't
as
know who he's
one
gonna
of
rent to.
a number of possible uses. I mean, I guess, the problem that we are faced with is that, there's an array of uses that building may be suitable for. Some of them may fall under the definition of what we're approving tonight. If it deviates from that, then it comes back and we get another shot at it. And we'll re-examine whether or not the conditions that we're putting in place tonight are still appropriate.
And he's gonna have to pay $1,700 every time that happens?
Now, if it's administrative.
It probably won't change the footprint of the building, so they're probably fairly minimal. I would think 95% of them would be administrative.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah, the only time it wouldn't be is if one of the uses is a special use.
Right.
Right? Because then it would have to get, but if it's just our use permitted by right, which is really any use in the D1, that's permitted by right.
So I stand corrected, it doesn't necessarily come back to us. It can be handled administrative depending upon the magnitude of the deviation.
Yeah, and I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, is there a way to prevent him from having to come back, but that would only be the case if the applicant walked in and said, here's my building and here are my occupants. And if he's not in a position to do that, I mean, I don't think you want to just say, no, we're not going to let you build them until you have your leases signed and we know. So it has to be a little flexible, like a retail center.
Can you come after it from a more restrictive point of view, like planning for it to be what he's saying it's going to be? And then he can use it for that, or the other one, because it's less restrictive, and that can be easily handled administratively?
I think that's what's happening here. He's coming in and saying, I want to use it for X. And you guys are saying,
X-
granted.
X seems
X
less
meaning-
restrictive to me than what
X-
he's saying.
Well, anytime there's a change, they have to come back. So it's not that it's changing from less to more or more to less. It's that if it's different than what he's approved for, is the trigger in zoning.
It's a bit confusing.
Yeah.
I have a question about the dumpster, just going back to that. Will it have a gate on it?
If that's, I mean, if that's what's needed, it can. In the, neighborhood, there is a compliance with that. The first building as you pull in, there's a dumpster right on the corner with no screening. That's gonna be at the back of the property, almost 360 feet or 340 feet back there. It's not gonna be visible from the road. You're really gonna have to drive up in there to see it. So if it's a compliance thing that you guys want, I can put a gate there. It's just not a typical, thing that you see on an industrial area.
And I don't know what's required for dumpster screening. If we
It says
require
enclosure,
gate.
doesn't it? I think it just says enclosure.
It doesn't say gated enclosure, it's not.
Well, we're just, we're requiring that for all, anybody that builds downtown, some of them. But I think all it says is enclosure, so what's an enclosure? I've seen some where they've had chain link fence with the plastic in there so you can't see through it. And most of them I see down here on Apple Street don't have a gate on. I think that's one of the issues I think the people collecting the refuse would have. Now they gotta get out of the truck and they gotta open the gate, and will the gate stay open while I'm trying to pick up the dumpster? I just...
If I read the plan though correctly, you're screened from the neighbors, correct, of
Yes.
the trash?
Yes.
So the only open view
Will be
is
towards the front.
Yes. Toward your building.
The backside actually goes up quite a bit there.
Right.
That's why we have the retaining wall there. And then, both sides, the property's really surrounded with trees.
Well, one of the last parking lots are done in town for commercial business, that was Pro Auto. And we required they had a dumpster enclosure. Did they ever put a gate on that, or don't, you know?
I don't recall.
I mean, gates aren't typically used just because, like you said, a trash guy's not gonna come up and wanna open the gate
Yeah,
to dump, so.
Unless you're at the fire
I've never seen them.
department. Fire department, or we have a fence around it.
I just
Okay.
don't know what the requirement is. If it says that they need to have a gate, then it should, if it's not required under the ordinance, but that can be reviewed administratively later.
Yeah.
I guess I would say that if it says it has a gate, we've got a huge compliance issue in the community that probably means we ought to revisit that.
I would prefer it have a gate, but I'm not gonna, if it's not required, it's not required.
Well, I guess I'm just saying to you that, other than maybe the fire department, yeah, the example is right. You drive down Apple Street, and every one of those is open. It's enclosed on 3 sides, but it's not gated. I don't know, Levi, where are your, I don't even know where yours are.
Yeah, I don't want to.
They're really enclosed.
Yeah, sorry.
I don't have a dumpster.
Okay.
Let's take a walk.
Yeah. All right, so, the one issue then that we have to specifically reference in our action is approving the use of existing vegetation for the screening, correct?
And it is as represented on the site plan.
Yeah.
I can't read the thing, so I don't know what it says.
So are we, Jackie's nodding her head, so lead on.
Oh, I don't have the, I'm stumbling because I don't have.
What we're approving the proposed site plan.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the proposed site plan by Stora Construction, with approving the existing vegetation.
Vegetation as meeting our screening
Yes, as meeting our
requirements.
standards of compliance.
Okay.
And then you wanted the last 2 bullets as conditions.
With the last 2 bullets as conditions.
Yes.
Support.
Okay, motion and support. Further discussion?
You're talking about the last 2 bullets. Approval shall be subject to review by the City of Hastings Fire Department and the Department of Public Works. That's what you're talking about? I wanna go on record as saying I don't want this gentleman to have to spend any more money. We've had a couple of these site plans been approved here, and then they've spent thousands of dollars trying to add stuff to it, and I don't wanna see that happen, so. I was hoping that maybe Travis would be here tonight so we could ask him about the drainage and everything out there, but he's not here.
He did a review, and there's a number of items that he needs to even make a review that aren't listed.
Right.
But that's common, because we don't want the applicant to spend a lot of money doing engineering for stormwater, and then he needs to make significant modifications to the site, then all of that's a waste. So we commonly do that
Well,
afterwards.
I get that, but I know of, in particular, one guy came in here and we approved a site plan, and it cost him $10,000 for engineering after that. I don't want that to happen. I think that Travis has enough expertise in the drainage end of it, the water, what do they call it? I think Travis should make this decision. I don't want him to have to go hire an engineer to, go get this project approved. I think $1,700 is pretty good-sized chunk of money for him to pay to do this, and, I'd like to see it move along kind of fast, too. I don't know when you're planning on doing this. I don't want to sit on this thing for 2 or 3 months waiting for somebody to make a decision on drainage, so.
Well, it wouldn't take that long. As soon as the information is provided, then it can be evaluated and returned.
Well, but he's had
Like
this.
he's already working
He
with
applied
someone
for
on
this
the
the
site plan.
17th, was it? I just think we ought to be a little farther ahead when this comes to us. But that's my thought.
So, do you have an outside engineer that's working on that issue, or?
So we did these plans out from what the neighborhood looks like. So we try to stay in compliance with surrounding, that road. And we didn't want to over-engineer, water for no reason. And all that does is bring more cost to me, and then I'm over-delivering on something that really didn't need. So that's where we stood when we drew it up. I don't know, I just followed sort of the grounds of everybody around me. They're sloping their rainwater off into either a detention area or it's just dispersing into grass. There's only one lot on that whole road that has gutters.
So, all they'll look at is not, they're not gonna dictate the design approach.
Yep.
The only thing they check for is whether the applicant's way they've designed it, so it's up to you how you do it.
Right.
Your only parameter is you gotta retain your own stormwater
Yep.
runoff on site.
Right.
And all the city does is say, is the design that you're proposing
Yep.
capable of doing that?
Yep.
That's all they do. So,
I think now that we switched to concrete between the buildings, because that was considered parking, we might have to throw a couple storm drains there and pipe it, but that lot all travels to the northeast, and then there's a big 10-foot drop before the intersection there, and that's where all my water's going to. That's what we have everything going to, and if I have to contain that water even more, we can put gutter, a system in the center of that parking that routes it that way, but.
and I don't know that you need to, but that's the value of, the site plan
Right.
has right elevations,
Right.
and then you're showing,
Yeah.
then Travis is able to say, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's all gonna go directed that way, and
Yeah.
this is of adequate size to hold
Right.
it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're looking good for that. I don't.
Are you okay with that, Dave?
Near it.
I'm sure that's sand out there, you can probably
Oh,
put
it is, yeah, oh, yeah.
probably put a leach manhole in there, but that's up to whoever.
Well, and that's, originally, between the two buildings, we were gonna do fresh concrete, because that wasn't
Right.
considered parking in my original conversation. And then we got the revise that said it had to be concrete, so now we got more water retention instead of, so that's where I think we're gonna have to put a couple potholes there with a, 6-inch culvert diverting out, but that was something I wanted to come and, communicate with. I didn't wanna plan it if I didn't need it, but, if I need to do it, then we'll do it.
That makes sense.
Okay, other questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Approved. Good luck.
Thank you,
Yeah, good luck.
appreciate it,
We appreciate what you're doing.
it means a lot.
All right, old business, JPA, JPC update. Have anything? It was riveting.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
We approved minutes.
Yeah, as you might conclude by Sarah's remarks. There wasn't much. All right, work task list, Dan?
I did remove several of the items that that have already obtained both Planning Commission and the Council text amendment ordinances, so those have been removed. There wasn't any additions.
Any questions for Dan on the work task list? Okay. Tracking report, Dan?
Let me see. No, there were no changes to this month's report.
I see we finally got a fair amount of activity going on in Meadowstone.
Yes. Yep.
Any questions for Dan on the tracking report? Okay. Discussion regarding the revised zoning district consolidation. You leading that off, Dan?
Either I or Rebecca can.
Yeah, well, I think, so it was introduced, you received the map last month. We had talked about it the month before, and you had said that we think you received these two things the month before, and then you agreed that you really thought it would be easier to discuss if you could see it illustrated, so you received the zoning map last month. And so there was general discussion. I know that in response to one of the topics discussed, which was the R1A, Dan provided you that background memo, so that was one of the things that came out of your discussion. And then I think you just kind of decided that maybe you wanted to study it a little bit more. And so, I mean, I really don't have anything new to add, but...
The committee continues to work on it, so. Any questions, comments, suggestions?
I'm just curious, in regards to the memo I did draft regarding the R1A zoning classification. Considerable amount of property up on the northeast quadrant is zoned R1A, as is the Serenity Village property is zoned R1A. So as long as development moves along in accordance with the R1 zoning district standards, there's no issue. If the proposed use of some of those properties up there would be multifamily uses, then there is a greater issue, because the R1 district really doesn't support multifamily type of development. And as you read through the memo and how the ordinance was put together, 15, 20 years ago, it was really as the result of a Hastings area plan, joint planning efforts between the city of Hastings, Berry County, Rutland, and Hastings townships. To stray or to move away from the uses in the R1 district really requires the sign-off of all those municipalities. So,
I have a question. So, I'm not familiar with the joint area plan. I know you had sent me some stuff on it. I just didn't have a chance to look at it. Does this only affect the city? Does this affect the other township zoning? Do they have a R1A or something similar?
Yeah, but that was the theory behind it. So they did a plan for that area, and then they each adopted the same zoning district for it.
I don't know what that would even look like.
right. But again, it appears that the city would be the bearer of the greater restrictions, especially since there is considerable amount of area developable property that, unless it fits the R1 classification, really could not be developed for any use other than that without approval from the other signatories, being the other municipalities, as I understand the ordinance.
Who would they be?
It would be Berry County,
Rutland,
Township,
Hastings Township.
Even though Rutland doesn't border that property, they would be included in that?
Yes.
Like Seabury County.
Yeah. It states all signatories
Really?
of that plan. So there is one option, and I did reach out to Berry County Planning and Zoning, and there was an agreement of where we are today compared to where we were back in the mid-2000s. It's a totally different landscape from both a housing need standpoint and just the environment that we live in. So I just posed a hypothetical. What if the city of Hastings would desire to exit that agreement? Would there be pushback? Likely no, is what I was told. So just throwing out there food for thought.
So this all this land bank stuff, would that come into play up there too?
No. Well, only to the extent that developers could use that as a tool if they wanted to, but the underlying zoning is what could be a roadblock to development up there. Like, based on the ordinance, couldn't create a PUD because that's a separate zoning classification. You can't stray from the R1 zoning classification and the R1A.
I think unfortunately, we've got a chicken and egg theory.
Right.
Going, because if we go to those units now and say we just want to vacate the plan, they're going to say, well, what are you going to do with it? So without having a project, I think it's going to be more difficult to get them to agree to it. May not hurt to have the discussion, but
But I would hope that they would feel, as I think, I mean, myself at least, feels about their jurisdictions,
Right.
that they can zone it however they
Right.
want to. I mean, we should communicate, share master plans, we know what each
Yeah.
other is doing, but we should be able to zone what fits our master plan and our long-term goals, and they should zone their communities the same way.
should have done that before we entered into this agreement. Because we're the ones that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, but maybe
It
they
was a
thought
long
it was...
I
time
don't know
ago.
what
I mean,
time.
it was a long time
Yeah,
ago.
so maybe at the time, they thought that was a good idea, but
Maybe-
maybe now, it's not such a great idea, because...
Well, the problem is, we don't know what, if anything, did they give up in order to
right.
get us
But
to
once we
do
find those
this.
details out, I mean, we
Right.
could make a
So,
better informed decision.
I think
We can have a
it
better
bears having
conversation.
discussion to at least try to figure out why in the world we did this. Because it certainly made no sense for us to do this unless we were getting something that we wanted in return.
That could be.
Well, it looks like some of the neighboring properties in the township are zoned R1A. So
They may have adopted
adopted the same
same thing, yeah.
But I can tell you, looking at the minutes of the planning commission meeting where this was proposed, it was there were 2 members absent, and it was 4-3 votes, so it wasn't unanimous to adopt this ordinance.
That's good to know, too.
Unfortunately, it doesn't change the fact.
But
that
it's
it's
still-
It doesn't, no, but it was
Right.
just additional information I
And-
wanted to research.
And I'm sorry, if you said the date of that meeting, I didn't catch it. When was this done?
How long you been on?
07-ish timeframe, mid to late 2000s, that timeframe. I think the discussion started like in 06 or 07. The ordinance probably wasn't adopted.
So it was adopted in '09.
09, okay. The discussion started like in 06 or 07 with a joint planning, Hastings area plan, joint planning agreement started earlier than that. And then it culminated in this ordinance.
Well, I guess my suggestion would be the first thing we ought to do is take a look at the county master plan.
Hot off the presses.
Hot off the presses, the award-winning, Berry County
And there'll be a new
master
zoning
plan.
ordinance too.
Huh?
And there'll be a new zoning ordinance
Right,
too.
so we might want to take a look at that first and see what it says, and then have a discussion with the 2 townships.
Good idea.
And that's not, at least from my perspective, that's not a comment on the value of what the current regulations are there in R1A. It's just, we should be able to have the flexibility to
Right.
determine that for ourselves,
Mhm.
especially while we're already consolidating our zoning districts.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's the most
I
appropriate
mean, all I
time to
can
do
think
so.
of is that maybe the then current zoning in the township was ag, and we knew that our opportunity to develop would be better if it were compatible with what we thought at the time that we wanted to do.
I'm sure it made perfect sense in
I'm-
2009.
I don't remember, so. and I'm not sure when I came on. Somewhere right around that time frame, but
How did he vote on it?
I don't,
I'm hoping-
honestly, I don't recall
I'm
that.
hoping I was one of the ones that was absent, yes, yeah.
Oh, well, it's just something to work through and
So,
find
I
out
don't know that
about.
we can tell you anything more than that. but,
No, I just,
if
you would, the planning commission had
I mean,
asked
I
last
think
month
it makes
about this,
sense
so.
to continue to try to research it and find out what the appetite may be for either vacating the agreement, or would we at least have agreement to change the terms of R1A?
Well, I would think so certainly the county master plan, but then I would say, looking at what the vision of that joint plan was, of that area plan.
Right.
Right, and maybe it's just a matter of, maybe there's still support for the plan, but maybe there's a better way of executing it.
Yeah.
Right, and so the R1A maybe is ripe for update, or maybe everyone agrees to scrap the joint plan, but I mean, it sounds like there might be, it sounds like we need to remind ourselves what that plan is. And
Right.
whether there's still value to it.
And before you really start sweating, Dave, I horribly misspoke. It wasn't planning commission, it was city council that voted
Oh,
4-3.
thank goodness.
So, you know, after I said it, no, it was the council minutes of the adoption of the ordinance.
Okay.
Which is 4-3 with 2 members absent.
I bet you the planning commission wholly supported it. Joint planning, right, is inherently supported by planners, for what that's worth.
I don't know.
I don't know.
So how'd I vote on that? 4-3, I'm sure I was there.
Again, I'll share that with you
More,
tomorrow.
more information to follow. I don't think we...
Yeah, could we have a copy of those minutes, please?
They're public records, so I...
Right, so if I want to, I can just go find it.
All right. Any other comments, questions for Rebecca or Dan on either of those topics? Okay. Public discussion and comment? Mr. Rezegi?
None tonight. Vote tomorrow.
Thank you. Staff comments? Vote
One
tomorrow.
thing I overlooked for tonight was, we'll need to do a nomination and election of a new vice chair with the exit of Tom. So I'll have that on the agenda for next month.
Okay. Very good.
Very good.
Commission comments? Jackie?
None for me. Vote tomorrow.
Levi? Sarah?
Just welcome to the commission.
Thank you.
Yes. Bill?
No comment.
Nicole?
I'll just say, if you didn't get a chance to go down to the plaza for the Trumbull Back to School Bash, it was fantastic turnout. They had about 2,000 people down there for that. They went through about 3,000 hot dogs in 3 hours. So it was a fantastic event, and looking forward to that coming back every year. So that's all I have to say.
I was down there about 10 o'clock, and there were a lot of people there then. You know, I don't think they started till like 4.
Yeah, they didn't start until 4.
We have 3 properties out in the industrial area we sold. We have 2 that's been a while since we've heard anything. You know, there's a sign at the end of the road, those people said they're gonna build. Have we heard anything from those 2 parties? The insulation company and the company from Wayland?
The company from Wayland, next year is when they communicate with me that they're going to start the site plan process. The other company, I've heard not a thing from.
I know last year the company from Wayland was, they put the sign up and getting ready to go, and no.
Costs and interest
Yeah,
rates
I
and
get that.
things, so.
Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Support.
Moved and support. All in favor, say aye.
Bye.
Opposed, same. We are adjourned.
Okay, have a good night, everybody.